Okay, welcome to the stream. Can you just drop a comment if we are live? Just having a couple of technical glitches today. But we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about a fairly sensitive incident today then. And that is what occurred on the 29th of July in the UK. This was the Southport stabbing incident. We're going to go straight to the shared screen here. Here we go. Now, you'll recall this incident then. This was the Southport attack. This was the guy. We found out some new information over the last 24 hours, which has been pretty upsetting or frustrating for a lot of people, to say the least. We're going to go through the full story. They're still using this image of him from, 10 years ago or whatever, but they've now sort of come out and said, please just drop in the chat if yeah, okay, great. So I know we are live. That's great. Thank you. I'll continue. So they've actually come out now and said that they found an Al-Qaeda manual and they found ricin here. And what they're trying to do is cover this up completely. Let's go to the top of what bit the BBC is talking about. They're trying to completely cover this up and say that, oh, they've only just found out. Well, I went through all of the logs and I went through all of the reports to see if they really have just found out about this. And the answer is no, they haven't. So this incident obviously occurred on the 29th of July. Absolutely one of the worst incidents, I think, in the UK in a long time, let's just say that. And then as a result of that, we had the protests, we had riots as well, but everything was just called the riots by the media. And of course, the politicians, Labour, just attacked everybody. Anybody who protests was a right-wing extremist, as it were. A lot of people went to prison for saying things that was misinformation, as they called it. It's now come out that it actually wasn't misinformation. And I'm wondering, are those people going to be released from prison? So what are we talking about? Well, some of those people initially said, oh, this was probably a terrorist incident, right? You saw that a lot of people said that, and a lot of people got prison sentences for saying it. Well, it's now come out that actually, and I'm going to say it, it was a terrorist incident. However, you're still not allowed to say this. You are not allowed to post on social media, according to the UK government, that it was a terrorist incident. Why? I'm going to show you the article in a second. They're claiming that even though he had this manual, the terrorist Bible, as it were, manual, and he had poison, he had ricin and poison, they're saying it wasn't, they still don't know what his motives were. Can you believe this? And they held back this information as well, because until after the sort of protests that were going on, and it's not even a protest, it's an event that went on over the weekend. So let's go through this article and you'll see how unbelievable the BBC reporting is here. It's just mind-blowing. So they said government became aware of new Southport charges in the last weeks. No, that's not true at all, because if you actually, well, they might be aware of the charges, but they would have known what was found, because there was a search of his house right away, and that's when all this stuff was found. So they've known about this since the end of July. So he was accused of, well, he did murder 3 young girls in Southport, and he's facing 2 further charges, including one under the Terrorism Act. So they haven't yet said he's being charged. He hasn't been charged under this yet, but they are going to charge him under it. And they said that, and we've got conservative leadership saying that they've actually concealed this information deliberately from the public. This is the new Labour government. A spokesperson for the Prime Minister said it was not correct to say the government had been involved in withholding facts from the public. I would call BS on that. I think they did, and it's pretty obvious. Even the police said it's certainly not the case that they've been keeping things from the public. Again, of course it was, because it was in both of these parties' interest for people not to know what the truth was. And you remember how And again, this is just the playbook that's going on right now. Initially, they said that he was Christian. You know, they said that. He said, "Oh no, he was Christian, and he's from a Christian home." Well, maybe the parents are Christian, but if he was found with that book, then that suggests to me that he wasn't. Okay, so that's the first thing. They also said that he was a Welsh-born native, and you know all this sort of stuff, and that he wasn't from overseas and all the other stuff. So there's all these details that they deliberately put into the public domain that weren't accurate. I won't go too detailed on all of that aspect, but you understand where I'm going with all of this. The CPS, this is the Crown Prosecution System, said it's taken time to bring the charges because this was lengthy and complex. No further details on why it was so lengthy and complex, but okay. On Tuesday, then, he was charged with the production of a biological toxin, contrary to Section 1 of the Act 1974, also being charged with possessing a PDF document of a kind likely to be useful to a person committing to or preparing an act of terrorism. It was the Al-Qaeda playbook, if that helps. This is where it gets bizarre. Counter-terrorism police are not currently treating the attack itself as a terrorist incident. Drop a comment. Does that make any sense whatsoever? I'm baffled by that. He's already been charged with the murders of those beautiful young girls. And they say, who died at a Taylor Swift themed dance class? No, they didn't die. They were murdered. This is the softening language that's being used. To charge someone under the Biological Weapons Act, the CPS has to get consent from the government's law officers. So they can't do that until they get the consent. Now, he appeared via a video link on Wednesday morning. It doesn't say why he didn't appear in court. It said he appeared via a video link. And in response, Keir Starmer said, all of us have a choice to make, including those running to be Conservative leader. They can either support the police in their difficult task, or they can undermine the police in their difficult task. I thought that was a bizarre statement. And ahead of the questions then, they said the court case was ongoing and warned against speculation that could prejudice the outcome. I mean, I don't know what more speculation you could possibly put out at this stage. And Robert Jenrick suggested the information was being concealed from the public. I would agree. I think that was the case as well. We were told for months that this was not a terror-related incident, and yet we've learned that this individual, the suspect, was allegedly reading Al-Qaeda manuals and had access to dangerous substances like ricin. But yet they're still saying, here's the beautiful girls, so sad for their families there. They're saying, look, the attacks are not being treated as a terrorist incident. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I think that they think that the public are that stupid that they're just going to accept what the BBC says and what the police and what the government says. I just don't think that's the case. As I said at the time, I think that was really the first wave of those protests. And what we really had, if you look at it properly, we had protests, valid, lawful, legal protests of people that were upset. And what happened was the government, the police, the media attacked everybody, attacked all those people, called them far-right extremists and all this other stuff. Then you had this counter group next to it. And I watched all the live streams like many of you. So I saw what was taking place. This was just mobs of whatever you want to say, just causing trouble. A lot of teenagers, a lot of young people just going out, smashing things up, setting fire to things, causing trouble for the police. And yet who did the media focus on? They focused on that group. And they said, look at all of these people, these protesters, look what they're doing. So they sort of alienated and demonized the genuine protesters and focused on the rioters. And that's really what we saw. And then you saw people that were sent to prison for tweets and posts and all sorts of other things. And now we're getting the truth coming out that actually some of those posts, and I think there's about 2 or 3 people then that may have to be released from prison because they said in the first place certain things which have now come out to be true. Let's go back to this. To be labelled as terrorism, the attack would have to be an attempt to advance a political, religious, racial or ideological cause, but it's not clear what possible motivation there may have been. I'm not joking you, this is the BBC website, you can see it in the browser here. They're saying they're not clear what the motivation was. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. They're urging people not to speculate. The Home Secretary said these additional charges will undoubtedly be distressing for people in Southport. I think that's an understatement. Let's move over to a couple of other stories then. We're going to do a few things. We'll cover some geopolitical stuff and military as well in this stream, just so we can get the most out of the time today. So the UK did have their budget today. I pulled out a couple of key points. You don't really need to know a lot of it. Some of the key points then: the basic rate capital gains tax on profits from selling shares increasing from 10 to 18%. And actually we saw a mass exodus of people selling today, selling out of the stock market. It was something like 300 million in outflows in one single day. So what I think it's about 50 billion that Reeves is saying that they're going to now get from taxation. I think one of the main ways is going to backfire big time. It's going to be a huge backfire on businesses. So they're really targeting businesses, which I would have expected anyway under a Labour government to actually target the businesses. So that's what we're seeing. But already you're seeing a lot of businesses exiting, and there's a lot more as well that have said they're going to exit. Let's have a quick look at some of these then. And the higher rate's going to rise from 20 to 24% here. Rates on profits from selling additional property is unchanged. So we were expecting that to happen, but I think they got the message it would not be a good move. So that didn't come through. Now, this is a big controversial one then on exemptions with inheriting farmland to be what they call made less generous from 2026. No, this is going to be a disaster. So why is that? And what is the media not really saying here? So there's a certain, how can we put it, privilege, let's just say, of family farmers. So when they sell their farm, I don't know the exact rate, but if you think about capital gains, inheritance tax, death tax, whatever you want to call it, when it's passed down within the family, what do they want to propose now? I'm going to have to pull this up. What they want to propose now, I think it's on, maybe I don't have it, it might be at the bottom actually, but what they want to propose now is that people actually pay a certain rate on the farm when it comes through the family. Now, that's not really going to work. I think it's something like 20% on £1 million or so. But you think how many farms are worth $1 million or worth less than $1 million? If you can find me a lot of farms that are worth less than $1 million, please drop it in the comments, because I just don't know where they would exist in the UK. So I think it's going to be a 20% rate. Well, you think if it gets passed on, farmers are already struggling, so they would have to pay this 20% tax on inheritance. Well, where are they going to get that money? It's not as if anything's changed. It's not like they've just bought it or something. It's just that their parent has passed away, so now they have to pay this tax to own the farm. Well, you know what's going to happen with a lot of these farms, especially some of the larger ones, there's just no way they're going to be able to pay the inheritance tax, so they'll either have to sell off land, sell off the farm. That means less farms. You see, it's very heavy, and it's not just Labour, it's Conservatives as well. They're very heavy against farmers, and this has been this massive attack on farmers for years now, and it just keeps going on. All the stuff they said they were going to do for the farmers as well, I was reading through the budget, I can't see any of it having materialized either. So there's a massive attack, because what do they want? They want these massive farms. They want these big companies, conglomerates to own everything, and they don't want the small family farms around. And if you disagree with that, please show me some evidence, because that is what I see here. Companies are going to pay national insurance at 15% on salaries over 5,000 from April. That's up from 13.8% on just 9,100. So they're going to get an extra £25 billion a year here from companies as well. The main rate of corporation tax is going to stay at 25% until the next election. So that will sort of hold off some of the exodus of companies. The fuel duty on petrol and diesel is going to stay with the 5% cut, and it's going to end in April. Actually, it's going to be kept for another year, so that will be April 26. And I think that's the main things really that you need to know from the budget there. They've also going to hand £3 billion as a budget boost for the military, and they've said that it will end fears that defense will bear the brunt of difficult decisions. Now, we knew they were going to boost the military because it just wasn't an option not to, with Ukraine, Russia, etc. coming up. As we keep talking about, there is going to be a further escalation in conflict, as some of these articles talk about as well. So it means the proportion of national wealth spent on military will decline slightly, but it's going to stay at around 2.3% of GDP. And the extra cash is expected to be used to cover the £400 million a year cost of giving soldiers a 6% pay rise backdated to April. It's also going to fund the purchase of weapons to replenish, keyword here, replenish the stockpiles that have been depleted by giving the weapons to Ukraine. So that's the other aspect. And the £2.9 billion injection will just be a one-off, is what they're saying. I don't think so. This is going to be probably even more as we go forward here. Now, I wanted to come on to the next point, which is within the conflict at the moment. We've just had Russia firing off missiles to simulate a massive response to a nuclear attack. This was again happened yesterday, and they said it was a response to an enemy first strike. Given the growing geopolitical tensions and the emergence of new external threats and risks, it's important to have modern and constantly ready to use strategic forces, is what Putin said. It took place at a critical moment in the war, weeks after Russia signals the West that Moscow will respond if the US and its allies allow Kyiv to fire the long-range missiles deep into Russia, which, remember, still hasn't been approved. Joe Biden vetoed that decision. On Monday, NATO said that North Korea has sent troops to Western Russia, something Moscow has not denied. Now, I want to just talk about that for a moment as well, because I didn't mention it before, and then I got all these comments, people blasting me on the stream. So I will say what I just didn't have time to say before. And that is, number one, it's possible that there are North Korean troops. It is possible. But the other aspect is you've got to understand that Russia is a massive country, and some of the regions within Russia have people that look like North Koreans. You look this up for yourself if you don't believe me on it. There's a lot of regions within Russia where people look like North Koreans. So the fact that there's all these people, all these soldiers coming in dressed in Russian uniforms, but they look like North Koreans, it could just be that they're from that region in Russia. Let's just put that out there. That is possible. But at the same time, there's all this intel that says, and they've tracked all the troop ships and all this other stuff of these North Korean soldiers actually coming to Russia. So there's that as well. But the intel is all from Western sources and South Korea and Ukraine. So is it biased? Yes. So can it be 100% trusted? No. But is it possible? Yes, it is possible. So I'm still on the fence with this aspect, and that's why I gave you the full breakdown of what it could mean. And actually that full analysis I did a day or two later, all the analysts, military analysts, actually came out and said something similar, that if it's the case, the North Korean soldiers would be doing it to get experience. Now, all the media's jumped on this and saying, oh, this is because Russia's losing so many soldiers and their army's going to be depleted within the next 2 years. That is the most ridiculous thing I've heard in a long time. Do you know that they are, even if they're losing 1,000 troops a day, they're gaining 1,000 troops a day just in the number of men turning of age and the training. I think they're adding probably 30,000 a month at least in new troops. So that part is nonsense. Russia doesn't need North Korea to provide them with soldiers. It doesn't. You look at the size of their military and their army. They've got plenty of soldiers. They could keep this going, forever. It's Ukraine has the challenge because they don't have that landmass and that number of people. And that's why I still think we're going to see. And actually, one thing I talked about with the French troops, Macron didn't want to put the French troops on the ground. Well, we've got some pretty interesting evidence coming out now that the French Foreign Legion is on the ground, and it's at least a battalion of them. And Macron, when he was asked about it, he says, I can't comment on that. So I think he probably would have said, no, that's not true. You think about that. If he, with Putin and everything that's going on, he would have said straight away, no, that's not true. So I think that is confirmed. We just had a report as well. There was some mercenaries that were captured, and I think they were killed actually on crossing the border into Russia. And if you look at in fact, don't look at the video because I did. I wouldn't recommend it. And you see the tattoos. A lot of the tattoos are either special forces guys or the sort of Rangers guys from the US, but they're very mixed, which is why I don't think they're the militaries of those countries. Some of them were, there was a Polish guy, there was an American guy, I think there was a British guy or something like that in there, mixed amongst them. We'll keep going a bit longer on the stream today, just because I'm doing less streams at the moment. But yeah, this was what the defense minister said then. He said that Putin had authorized this drill due to a response to a nuclear strike by the enemy. So it was basically an exercise that they were doing here. And remember, last month they approved changes to the nuclear doctrine. So they extended the list of scenarios under which they would consider using such weapons. They said that any assault on it supported by a nuclear power to be a joint attack. So this was a warning to the US not to help Ukraine strike deep into Russia with conventional weapons. And then we won't go through this article because it's long, but if you want to read an interesting article out of the Telegraph, this one's very interesting. And this writer here is trying to, he's stretching a little bit. He's trying to say that this is about to become World War III because of these North Korean troops, which again, we can't even accurately confirm. He's pulled all this evidence together, but it's not confirmed. It really isn't yet. So we need to see some sort of confirmation. But look at the numbers. You've got 2 million Chinese, 1.32, which is going to 1.5 million projected very shortly. This is the number of troops that Russia has. North Korea, 1.3 million. Now, these will be won't be as highly trained as, say, American troops. Look at the US, similar to North Korea, but one soldier does not from the US does not equal one soldier from North Korea. The training will be vastly different. The equipment will be vastly different as well. Another article, this came out of RMX. They actually did a role play. They did a war simulation on Russia attacking the Baltic states. And they said that they would go through Lithuania, which would be, well, decimated, as it were. And I thought what was interesting about this story was they said that this theoretical attack would take place in 2027. It's the same year that keeps coming up all of the time. 2027. And they said that Russian forces would launch assaults from Belarus and the Kaliningrad region, moving through Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. And they said that this would trigger Article 5, which is the collective cause, and it could take several days to activate as they authenticate that Article 5 had been triggered. And then it said up to 10 days it would take the NATO force before it actually got to the Baltic states, and that this German brigade stationed in Lithuania, which is only 5,000 troops, apparently is going to stop the German advance. Okay, so this one brigade, the Russian advance, this one brigade of 5,000 troops, that would be ready by 2027 is going to stop this massive advance. Okay, I mean, I don't know who modeled this, but sounds like a bit of a fairy tale there. Despite successful resistance, the damage to Lithuania would be severe, with the country left partially occupied and devastated by the end of the conflict. Thousands of fatalities on both sides would be recorded in a ferocious few days of fighting. That was the summary of the exercise. I don't think it would be thousands. I think it would be tens of thousands, not just thousands. And the Pentagon put out a statement that said that if North Korea does join the conflict, that American weapons would be permitted to be used on them. They've said that very clearly. South Korea is considering sending a team to Ukraine to actually monitor these North Korean troops. So they've come out and said a lot about this, actually. And they've said that this would destabilize the region quite heavily. And they are again stating at least 11,000 North Korean troops have been sent to Russia, and 3,000 of them have been moved close to the front lines. The official told reporters. Again, they haven't really provided any, I mean, I've tried to look for this evidence, but they haven't really provided anything. So if you have that, please drop it in the comments, because I'd be very interested to read this and either validate it, or we can look at this as somewhat propaganda until we have solid evidence. So they're saying that Ukraine is our ally, and that's why we're going to analyze and monitor the North Korean troops. Yeah, of course it is. Excuse me. Putin has not denied the involvement of North Korean troops, but said it was Russia's business how it implements a partnership with North Korea. And North Korea has also not acknowledged the deployment, but said that if it were true, it would be done in compliance with international law. I think we'll wrap it up there today, because my throat is going as well. Bit of a longer stream here. But thank you so much for being on the stream. I'll see you on Friday for the walk and talk here. May go down to a couple of videos a week from next week, but while I'm trying to get the new program all started. But we'll see how we get on. Thanks for being online. Take care. God bless. See you on Friday.